This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. It apparently has a mixed bag of issues. Sometimes it doesn't want to power on at all. Other times it does power on, but only for a short while before resetting. The owner's description you're seeing here describes a PC that became more and more stubborn as time went on, occasionally powering off to the point where it eventually wouldn't even power on. Though I will say that when I met him in person, he said that he had tried one last time to get it to fire up before meeting to drop the system off for this video here, and said that he was able to get it up and running, but again, only for a few minutes before shutting down. So that's why I mentioned that it's sort of a mixed bag. I'm not entirely sure what we're gonna get when we attempt to power this on. One other thing that I think is worth noting, the owner says that this PC was actually pre-assembled. So this came from a system integrator by the name of Doghouse Systems, Inc. I've never heard of them. I'm not sure if they do good work or bad work. I can't say either way. Frankly, it doesn't really matter to me because this system is out of their warranty coverage period. So it's not gonna matter anyway. The warranty was probably disclosed up front at time of purchasing, and the owner mentioned that it's not really worth going through that hoop. He just wants to know what's wrong with it. This is not a free parts fishing exercise. He was super open and upfront. I told him, hey, if your 3070's kicked the can, I'm sorry, my man, I can't just fork out several $100s for a broken card, but I can let you know that it is broken if it comes to that. Otherwise, some of this other stuff I should have on hand. I could get it up and running for you fairly quickly. And he was totally fine with that. And these are conversations that I always have behind the scenes with owners of these rigs for Fix or Flop. Just so you know, I'm not just throwing hardware and being a sucker all the time. I couldn't sustain this business model if that were the case. So we're gonna try to get to the bottom of this as soon as possible. I'm hoping that this is either temperature related or maybe power related, and that if it is one of those two things, other components weren't damaged in the process. Yes, this 3070 is sagging quite a bit. That's something I noticed very early on. We're gonna do something about that as well. And it's pretty dirty. Pretty dirty, maybe an understatement. It's very dirty. It's disgusting, especially along the bottom. This row of fans here is caked in thick dust. You can see even quite a bit of it collected on top of the graphics card. The back plate is not black anymore. It's sort of like a grayish brown, and I have a solution for that. Now, this is a bit out of order, admittedly. I would clean a system after I fix it, just keeps things a little more streamlined in my mind, but it just so happens that today's video sponsor is Wolfbox, and they make what's called a super power turbofan
MegaFlow 200.
That's a lot of adjectives to describe a handheld, super-powered fan. The MF200 features a high-performance compressor for peak wind speeds of nearly 90 meters per second, or about 200 miles per hour in bald eagle terms. And that means it absolutely rips. Yeah, it aids in the deep cleaning of caked PCs like this one for sure. Just make sure not to overspool or overbear fan blades in the process. And for flat surfaces and radiators, it tackles just about any degree of caked up dust and grime. You can even use it to air dry a car you've just washed and detailed, rivaling that of a proper leaf blower, but with the portability of a large cell phone, thanks to removable and rechargeable batteries. It also comes with a carrying case, Type-C charger, and interchangeable nozzles. The Wolfbox MegaFlow 200 air duster is perfect for any DIY enthusiast, and you can learn more about it by clicking the sponsor link below. Seriously though, this thing rocks. All right, now back to the fixing. Whew. Yeah, that is a huge difference. Obviously not perfect. We didn't deep clean it. We didn't scrub by hand. We just used air. So again, big shout out to Wolfbox for not only supporting the channel, but also sending a product that we can use literally every day in the studio. Again, gonna be linked below. All right, let's jump straight into trying to power this on now. I'm gonna flip the switch at the rear. I've got a portable monitor connected because I don't really know what's gonna happen. Will it even power on? If it powers on, will it reset quickly? Will it just idle and chill and not exhibit any symptom at all? Let's find out. Wow, okay. So that was on for like the shortest amount of time physically possible, probably like 10 to 20 milliseconds, and it flipped right back off. Let's try one more time. I don't want to keep doing this just in case. Wow, now it's not powering on at all. No reaction when we push the power button up front. Okay. Yeah, something is very wrong here. We do still have some LEDs poking through the motherboard here over rear I/O. Same around back, I'll show you. We do have the light illuminated for the power supply, but that's about it in terms of signs of life. Let's check behind here and see if we've got any, oh, look at that. Wow, this might have been the fastest we've ever honed in on an issue. That right there, that's not slotted in all the way. I guarantee you that's an issue. That's probably the only problem with this rig. At least, I hope that's the case. Throwing the camera back on the tripod, I'm just gonna show you before and after. So this is what we're starting with, and I'm just gonna give it a little bit of force, and there you go. So you shouldn't see any of the, I guess is that the female side on the PSU side? You shouldn't see any of that part sticking out. It should be almost entirely covered by the cable. We're gonna look further down. A few of these lower down also look a tad bit loose. Giving everything else behind the motherboard tray a once over, I can tell you, you've got like supplemental SATA power cables and things here. Those are all connected fully. Same with fan cables and the like. Yeah, nothing else is sticking out, at least back here. And as for the left side, 24 pin, the two 8-pin EPSs connected also look good, although you could probably get away with just using one of those. And for the graphics card, remember this is a 3070, so it's not the biggest deal that we're daisy chaining two 8-pins, but I generally recommend just running two independent ones for good practice. I don't have, of course, this PSU specific cable laying around. I don't have every power supply in existence in my closet, but the owner probably does, and I'll mention it to him when he gets his system back. It also wouldn't hurt at this point to give DRAM a quick check. Just gonna lightly press on both DIMMs, make sure that they are fully seated, and they are. All right, and here we go. Now this might not be our smoking gun, right? The owner could have just been swapping power supplies, cables. I'm not sure to what extent he actually troubleshot this. I know he just ran out of resources and that's why he reached out. So it's possible that that was just an extra issue on top of whatever else could be going on. Let's try powering it on once more. Okay, that didn't fix it. There is no worse feeling in the PC industry than when you push this button and nothing happens. Your heart just sinks. Also, I think it's interesting to note that this power LED is illuminated. We're just not getting any reaction from physically pushing the button. So it's almost like we're getting passive, maybe 5-volt, low power distribution to the LEDs and sort of like that power off state, but it's still connected to the wall and the power supply switch is still flipped on. You know, when you turn your system off, but it's all plugged in still. That's where we're at here. But any moment we demand like more than that. If we want 12-volt rails fired up and ready to go and distributing power to the important components that make a system run, it says no thank you. Not even a reaction. At this point, we got it to flicker once and that was it. And the instability of this, described by the owner, has me a bit worried. Where I'd expect this to go is one of 4 places. The first thing I'm gonna check is the front I/O wiring. If we just have a bad switch or something, there we go. That's an easy fix. We'll just jump the power switch pins. Assuming that's not the issue, however, we could have a borked power supply. We've seen that time and time again. We can check that with our inline tester. We could still have some issue with wiring, possibly a short, maybe insulation's punctured and we're shorting to the case or something along those lines, in which case the power supply would be doing its job here. We should be thankful for that. Or we could have some other vital component damaged. If the motherboard is damaged, for example, then it can't properly distribute power to the other vital components in order to get the system to boot up. So, yeah, we still haven't fully narrowed this down. Well, I can tell you his power switch is connected properly. I see it running into the 2 uppermost right pins next to the blank spot. I'm just gonna jump with my screwdriver anyway to rule out an effective power button on the case. Still nothing. Wow. Yeah, this thing's in pretty rough shape. I've got the power supply connected to our inline tester. Let's see what happens here. I suppose a power supply swap would be the easiest fix at this point. This is not gonna pull a ton of power. It's gonna be essentially idling. You can see barely anything. 3 watts there, but I don't hear any beeps. We've got to pass across the board for voltage detection. SATA power looks good, ripples look good, timings look good, yeah. This unit, so far at least, seems a-okay. And just for added peace of mind, I've gone ahead and bypassed his unit entirely with one of my known working ones. I've got 2 separate 8-pins running to the card, an 8-pin up top, and a 24-pin here. So just the vital stuff. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna jump the power pins. Would you look at that? All right, I don't want to leave this on for long, but this tells us a few things. This also doesn't tell us a few things. I want to make it very clear why. So we've only connected the motherboard, the graphics card, the CPU, and the power supply. That's it. We bypassed extra things, peripherals like RGB, fan controller hubs and things like that. So we're not running any SATA power cables, right? And because of that, we cannot rule out the possibility that one or more of those things in this rig is bad. So just because my inline tester didn't see it before, that doesn't mean that his power supply is actually bricked. We need to narrow it down. So what I'm gonna do is check every single cable back here and disconnect everything non-vital, use this power supply the exact same way we just used my replacement, where it's only connected to the vital stuff, and see if that issue persists. Because if it does, then that means this is likely the culprit. But if it doesn't persist and it runs just fine, then we almost certainly have something wrong with some of these smaller connections. And this guy specifically is what I'm most worried about here. So this control box, yeah, you want to make sure that this is connected all the way. Each of these cables, looking over everything I possibly can. So that's what we're looking at now. I've got the original power supply reconnected, 24 pin, 2 8 pins up top, and 2 supplemental PCIe 8 pins, but that's it. We don't have the SATA power cables connected or anything of the sort. So pretty much a mirror for my replacement unit. Let's see what happens. So there's low power, that still looks good. Let's jump the power pins. Oh, got a loose wire there, but that does fire up, which just tells me maybe we have an issue with the wiring of that hub that we removed, or maybe the hub itself is just bad. Maybe it's shorted out. Interesting. You can see we've also got a Dr. Debug over there, as well as independent debug LEDs. The green one's lit now for boot. And well, yeah, that's a boot. So it's probably in recovery mode for the number of times it's reset itself, but that's a pretty interesting find. All right, so as expected, we're in automatic repair. We're just gonna restart, and I'm gonna tab into the BIOS just to look over idle temps and see if anything fishy is going on. I think, so yeah, I just felt the AIO, the tube. So the pump is on and the fans are spinning. We shouldn't have any CPU or GPU temperature issues. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be misbehaving so far. It's not resetting itself over and over or anything. And we are in the BIOS, which is great. This is an older BIOS revision. Maybe we tackle that. I'm not sure if we'll do it on camera or not. 11700K. We've got XMP enabled, and temperatures look super chilly. So 29 degrees Celsius right now. I mean, that is ice cold. So this 360 mil is definitely doing its job. It's been a little over an hour and I've let the system idle in the BIOS. Temperatures never touched, I think, 35°C. So they were extremely low, no issues on the temperature front for the CPU. And I imagine the GPU is also covered. There is a 0 fan RPM feature with this 3070, which is why they're not spinning currently. It's not under any heavy load. And you can see here, it repeatedly loads into Windows as well. So I think it's safe to say whatever we bypassed by wiring the way we did is the problem. And the only thing we bypassed is the RGB fan controller. You'll notice these fans along the bottom of the chassis, as well as those running along the side of the motherboard, are spinning, but they aren't lit up. And typically these white diffused little plastic pieces would be shining some sort of rainbow puke or something along those lines. And they are not lit currently. The ones in the AIO are, but I think they're wired to themselves or maybe separately to a different RGB header on the motherboard. So because we disconnected power to that RGB hub to get the system up and running, these are not lit. Now I am curious what specifically is wrong here, because I'm just looking at the pinouts, making sure that we don't have loose wires or anything. This is clipped all the way in, and this just runs up to a fan. Like, there aren't issues with the cables themselves, so I'm not sure why we're seeing what we're seeing. But the moment we connect this, that's when the system doesn't want to fire up. Is there any insulation or anything in this cable? that's exposed, or I don't know, even the golden fingers, those all look good. And although I know this is gonna be difficult for you to see, the insides of each of these SATA power cables from the power supply itself also look good. Sometimes these little pins can get crossed over and that can cause shorts, right? The unit not to behave correctly, but in this case, every single connector looks fine. So I'm kind of at a loss here. Shot in the dark, let's see if maybe this side of the cable looks fine, yeah. So that one missing pin there, I'm pretty sure that's how it's supposed to be. Every unit's gonna be a little different, but that one's just unused for now. And you can see that's likely because since we have 5 wires on this side, we only need 5 running into each of these SATA power connectors. So yeah, just because there's an extra spot for a 6, it doesn't mean it necessarily is used. I'm gonna run this cable back in, but to a different SATA port just to be sure. I visually inspected each of these and there aren't any bent or missing pins in any of them. So just kind of, yeah, just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks. If I could manage to, there we go, get this thing connected. So let's see, will it fire up now? Let's go ahead and push the power button. And it does. You can see we've got the LEDs for the fans working now as well. So, was that it then? Is it maybe a bad connector, maybe something I can't see? Or was it a bad port on the power supply? It's just loaded into Windows, I could hear it there. Man, this one is odd. Let's try going back to the original port, sanity check. Actually, I don't remember if it was here or up one. I think they were all connected. They're all next to each other. Alrighty, and let's fire up again. Okay, so that seems to be working as well. You know, one of these connectors was also loose. This runs to one of those 2 sets of fans. I didn't think much of this when I reconnected it. It was very easy to pull in and out. You can see now it's like fully latched. So I fully seated it. Now it's not coming out no matter how hard I pull on the connector, which is what you want. Again, I don't think that was the cause because like you should be able to just readily disconnect these. Like that's not gonna stop the hub from working. You shouldn't do it with the system powered on, but I've done it plenty of times before and it's never created an issue. So I don't think that's to blame. I mean, could it possibly be just like a bad SATA connector? I don't even remember which one this hub was run into. There's that old saying, curiosity killed the cat. It is possible that what I'm about to do here creates more of an issue, but I have no doubt I could take care of the owner at this point. This is all self-inflicted, so of course I'll own this, but just because I wanna know for sure. I'm gonna disconnect the hub straight up while the system's on. Of course the system still runs. Now, the connector that I think this was plugged into is this one. It bulges a little more in the center, so it looks like it's been used a bit. I wanna connect this. Okay. Still works. All right, let's try the connector on the end. Still works. This is very, very confusing. Everything is reconnected again. Like it's all back to normal. I know it's a little messy back here now, but it's all back to the way it was when it first arrived. Everything is hooked up correctly, except for, again, this one RGB cable. Surely this wasn't the issue, right? You can see I can readily disconnect, reconnect that. Like that again should have no bearing on how stable the system is. It's fully clicked in. This one was loose. I should actually push that one a bit harder as well. There we go. I don't really have a good explanation for what we're seeing here. I've got it all buttoned back up here and it's still firing up. Like I know I sound like a broken record, but I cannot replicate the issue any longer. And I guess that's a good thing. In the grand scheme of things, like I'd rather do this than continue acting up for some mysterious reason. The only thing I can really pinpoint to is that very loose 24 pin. And I remember we did a video where we sort of like planted an issue with the system and we brought it into Geek Squad, Best Buy, to see if they could fix it. And all we did was slightly disconnect one of these cables back here. And we got a lot of backlash for that video because folks said that this sort of scenario wasn't common. And so how could you blame Geek Squad for not looking back here? Because that's never gonna happen, right? That just doesn't occur in the troubleshooting world. Well, my friends, proof's in the pudding. You can never make assumptions about the integrity of hardware without visually inspecting. That is such an important part of troubleshooting. And well, even I've made that mistake before, right? Where I just assume something's working or something is connected because how could it come loose, right? How could that happen? There are huge clips on the backs of these PSU cable connectors. How on earth does one of these pop loose? Well, did you consider the fact that maybe it wasn't properly secured in the first place? Did you consider the fact that the system was likely transported to and from? I mean, to get to a Geek Squad, right? It's gotta move from point A to point B. It's probably in a car getting tossed around, going over speed bumps and potholes and who knows what else. That could very well set a cable like this free. And that again is why we simulated what we did in that video. I stand by the integrity of that video. And again, we've seen here, it does exist in the wild. It is possible for something like this to happen. Now, it might not have always been this way. Maybe the owner just plain forgot to reconnect it, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, whether he forgot it or it just was never slotted in to begin with, it wasn't properly secured. And that led to, likely, the instability we saw here. The inconsistency with it wanting to boot up and then all of a sudden just completely not powering on, not showing any sign of life at all. That's a pretty sketchy symptom, but often an easy one to diagnose because it suggests that power is not getting where it needs to, and there are only a few places it can go. If I slip my Sherlock Holmes hat on for a second, what I expect the owner was experiencing and why things were so inconsistent for him, that 24 pin being loose is likely our smoking gun. If you think about it, the reason why the rig might work somewhat for a few minutes could be because that loose cable was actually making enough contact to send the appropriate power to run the motherboard. Remember, the motherboard allows everything else in the system to communicate. Storage drives, graphics cards, CPU, DRAM. As long as that board is getting power, then those things should be able to work seamlessly. But if that connector heats up because it's barely making contact, those prongs in there are just barely touching, when those heat up, because that's what happens when you run current through them, right? They'll slowly back each other out because they're not properly secured. They're not mechanically latched with that little black lever that each of these cables has. Once that connection is severed, the system is going to shut off. And likewise, if the 24 pin connector was already fully backed out at time of attempting to power a system on, you get exactly what you see here. What we experienced was a system that didn't want to power on at all. And if you tried to simulate this yourself, I don't recommend it, but you very well could, I suppose, you would see that your system wouldn't react at all. There would be no attempt for the rig to properly power on because, again, the motherboard isn't receiving its necessary power. Therefore, the GPU, the CPU, the DRAM, none of that will properly initialize, and it will just look like your system is one big paperweight. And again, you've got to keep things like transport in mind. If the owner was moving things around himself, trying to troubleshoot with what hardware he had available, maybe he set the system down and then propped it back up again and just didn't notice the loose connector, well, that could explain why at times it didn't want to power on at all, and other times it would power on for just a split second or two, right? So that inconsistency is a reflection of the improperly seated 24 pin. I think that makes the most sense here. Thankfully, it was a quick, easy fix. It didn't require any additional hardware, and so far the system has been running no problem. In fact, the screen just, the screensaver keeps kicking on, but you can see it's still waiting to do whatever the owner wants to do in Windows. It doesn't have any issue on that front. It hasn't since we've addressed it. So that's, I think, the best case scenario for all parties involved, a fix that literally costs $0.00. We've again repeatedly loaded into Windows. We've verified that temperatures look good across the board, especially on the CPU side. In the BIOS, idle temps suggest that there's not an issue at all with mounting pressure or the AIO itself. Everything apart from maybe the BIOS revision looks to be in good working order. That's something that I will discuss with the owner. I might just do that off camera. We've updated BIOSes in several recent episodes in this Fix or Flop playlist, so I'm not gonna run through that again, but just know it should and likely will be tackled. Oh, I almost forgot. Before we wrap this up, I want to address this graphics card sag because, yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it is pretty extreme for that. We've got a GB001 anti-sag bracket from Lee & Lee. This thing's pretty boss because it's totally hidden. It installs on top of your motherboard, and you can see little arms that stick out from the board itself or from the plate that you install on top of it that prop the card up. Now, it's not the best solution technically speaking because the front left side of the graphics card will not be directly supported. So there still will be a tiny bit of sag, but this kit right here is definitely going to improve our current situation. And just like that, no games, looking straight at it from the side, graphics card sag is eliminated. And this is where we'll have to call it, folks. The owner described an issue where the system would power on over and over again. It would just constantly reset. And then later described an issue where the system wouldn't power on at all. We literally saw both of those. For a split second, we saw the reset, and then we saw it just hard shut down and not power on ever again until we addressed those minor connection issues. And since then, this gaming PC has not flinched, which is exactly what you should expect for an expensive build like this. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. Again, if you or someone you know has a broken system like this and you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free, whether we have to replace things or not, whether we choose to or not, you will not be charged a dime for anything. And that's thanks to your viewership. So thank you so much for watching this one and the others in this playlist. Be sure to show some love down in the comment section below and consider subscribing if you haven't already. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.